So there are 6 guiding principles for the health of RDA. I have to remind you. So the principles are openness, community-driven, consensus, non-profit and technology agnostic or neutral, harmonization and inclusivity that drive all your work on our work together. We want to collaborate at maximum. So for today, we have a collaborative note. Can you minimize this, please? You can scan this code if you want to participate. You have also it on your computer, even if there is nothing on it. Yeah, on the right button you have. So you can give your name, your affiliation, your email, and your social media. Put your ID, suggestion, remarks, and give any resource related to the topic, like links, DOI, and publications that you could have provided. And it's also a way to join the papers that we plan to write together. And for that, if you want, add your ORCID in the social media column.
Roman, sorry to disturb. Can you hear me? This is Alison. We can't see your slides properly, so we can't get the QR.
Yeah, I don't have, I see, perhaps it's me, I have the focus and I don't have the focus. You know, it's the little square here.
What we see is the Google slide,
okay. Okay.
hidden.
No worries.
I don't know how to explain it. The open slide deck, yes, but not the slideshow.
Okay, so I hope you will be able to see it online. The objective of the session are to talk about the strategy for developing a common terminology for data management. This is a way to establish governance for data management terminologies, formulate terminologies for cataloging service and skills, and enhance quality of data management through better terminologies. Indeed, we will only start to discuss on all these topics and perhaps focus on some of them at the end. And the paper is planned with a method that is radical collaboration. Everybody can come at the beginning, at the end, and the goal is everybody will bring a stone in the paper, even if it's a little stone.
I'm very sorry,
So
Roman.
please connect to the link.
Oh, no.
That is available
I don't
normally.
think you did.
Sorry.
Can you hear me?
I don't have the focus. Give me the focus. No. Click. Yeah. Okay.
If anyone can hear us, can you share the link to the slides and then we can go through them ourselves?
So this is not working. Yes, it's working now. Okay. So the speakers. First speaker is Anne-Sophie Badge, with first introducing of the poster and the terminologies in data management context that we have proposed to have a quick overview of what could be issues in the data management on terminology on data management. I will have a short talk on competence centers and terminology associated. Paul Miller from DESI in Germany will talk about terminologies for data services. Alison Specht from Australia will talk about terminologies for data and all multi-language that are associated. Yvan Lebras will talk about terminologies for virtual research environment, and Pedro here will talk about terminologies for data in machine learning. So I let the floor to Anne-Sophie. So Anne-Sophie.
Thank you, everybody. Hello, everybody. My topic is terminology for data management challenges. Challenges summarized in the poster. How to reuse or develop standardized terms for essential data management practices and tools. How to address polysemy, provide a clear example to avoid confusion among stakeholders. How to identify gaps in existing glossaries, particularly regarding data ownership and intellectual property, and organize coursework processes. décembre. Ah, sorry. Yes. Sorry. 1 minute. Okay. How to formulate terminology for cataloging surveys and skills, improving clarity and communication. How to disseminate the usefulness of defining, maintaining, and using terminologies transversally and in disciplinary communities. And finally, how to enhance data management quality through better terminologies and promote reuse and develop terminologies that directly contribute to higher quality data management practices and ensure terminology support in the FAIR principle to enhance data, ensure reliability, reproducibility, and usability.
Thanks, Anne-Sophie. So that's the little pictures you have here, a kind of start to summarize with a hidden part what is the data management world. And we have lots of questions that are at each stage. And I propose to see you in front of the poster or during the poster session to talk about that. So the context about terminology is huge, and people, when we are talking about terminology, say, okay, it's not my word, it's not my issue, it's not my discipline. But indeed, it's concerning everybody. This is a representation of the semantic web with all the vocabularies that are linked, and the linked data by Tim James Ender. And as you can see, all vocabularies are linked, and then when you want to make a meta-analysis, you have to take it then in account, even if it's not from your database. There is a terminology issue, but also lots of other data management issues that are strongly linked that will need an investment at the global level of 5% of the amount of research. That was a paper presented several months after the FAIR principles. We had a new project in Europe that is called OSCAR. We want to provide competence center at the European level. That is a way to harmonize practice and vocabularies, indeed, through clusters. So what is a competence center? Competence Center is a community-based virtual hub dedicated to foster research excellence through training and knowledge transfer, and provide expertise, best practice, and services in relation to open science. We do that through the 5 clusters of science in Europe that are social science, astronomy, astrophysics, environment, and life science with health, food, and biodiversity issues. And for that, we have components, and we compare components and their definitions and the services that are associated and the vocabulary to describe this service. So we call that Composable Open Data and Analysis Services, CODAS. And all these CODAS should be accessible via virtual research environment in the dream world. So for that, we have some means, but we know that there are other initiatives that are arriving in all over the world, and we would like to do the same thing than others also, not going on all definitions and seeing that in Australia, in Brazil, or in America, it is totally another thing. So we have, for that, for the start, 78 projects that are coming from several communities in all these disciplinaries that are using different vocabularies. And we have tried in a first workshop to see and to define and contextualize a first set of controversial terms to determine which are the ones to prioritize toward building a common vocabulary among science clusters. So we have a first schema that is here that I will not describe today, but we can see very common words like dataset, hosting service catalogs, services, computing resource, and all of these things we were approximately agree on the definitions. That must be expanded to other communities, and that's the goal of the paper that we will plan after this session. So here now we have the presentation of Paul Minard. I don't know if Paul is online. Yeah, great. That's
Hello
a good
there.
surprise. Happy to see you, Paul. Can you hear you? Can you talk?
I don't know. Can you hear me okay? Is that working?
You are muted or we don't hear you.
You don't hear me. Okay. That's disappointing.
We had this problem earlier when I tried to tell Ramon that that he wasn't flicking the slides in a way we could see. So I think maybe they can work it out and it'll be good for you, Paul.
Okay, because I
Sorry?
don't think me right in the chat.
Because we can hear each other, but I don't think they
Yeah.
can.
They can hear him. So it's an issue perhaps from here.
Right. This is
Oh,
not...
yes. The God voice is here. Hello, people. I think we can hear you now.
Can you hear me now? Is that working?
Yeah, that's perfect. You can introduce yourself because I didn't have time.
Oh,
And let's go for 7 to 10 minutes.
Okay. So Romain, can you show the slides? Do you have those? Because I can't at the moment. It's just showing
the first one, you said this one.
I can't see it, so is the one. See,
the first one is challenge in a nutshell.
Challenge in a nutshell. Yep, that one. Okay, I can. If you can show that, I'll just work from there because at the moment the video's not showing that.
Yeah, I've seen that. Sorry, I can't. I can just tell you the title if you can follow in the same time, and
okay.
I will do the next.
Okay, we'll do it that way. That'll be fun.
Okay.
So it's a great privilege to be here virtually, unfortunately, to talk a little bit about the sort of terminologies that we're using in, and I've chosen or given my own background in photon neutron facilities, particularly photon facilities. I've chosen that as a particular focal point for the discussion. I think it highlights some of the challenges we're facing there in sort of terminology and related aspects. So the suggestion was to write down the challenges in a nutshell. That turned out to be harder. So just to run through the list here. So what challenges we have with, so in photon neutron facilities, we have a high turnover of people. So experiments are typically 1 day is unusual, but it can be a couple of days up to a week. And then new people come in with somewhere in the region of 20 people running concurrently on the larger facilities. There's a large variety of what people are investigating, from very small viruses up to relatively large things like violins and other sort of cultural heritage items and everything in between, sort of material investigations. We're not just doing one thing or doing 10 things, it's closer to 500 different things that you might be doing to investigate these objects. The culture, that the way people are working is historically been based on writing things down in logbooks, and that persists. Transition somewhat to the more modern age with, for example, Google Docs, but nevertheless it's capturing metadata from that's a challenge. There's even people bringing their own equipment to facilities with custom hardware or closed or commercial control software, which then is difficult to control. So next slide, please. Oh, good. So just to give you an idea what we're talking about, so these are mostly big facilities, X-ray sources, storage rings, the linear accelerators. You can see on the left 2 rings. The one on the left is the Petra facility at Daisy. You can't actually see it so well. That's the orange ring. It's underground there. And the middle one is ESRF, which is in sort of nearby Grenoble. And the European exfil, the one on the right, is more of a straight, more kind of a straight line there. So they come in generally 2 flavors, going round in a circle or going a straight line. That's these are where the research takes place. There is, typically 30, 40 different stations which are producing data at the same time. So just to give you a feel for what we're talking about there. Next slide, please. So, yep, the simple view on what happens. So they set up the experiment. What they want to do is the sample, whatever it is a virus or a violin or maybe a battery system or something else, gets set up so it can be investigated. The facility provides the X-rays to do the investigation. The detectors provide the raw data. The raw data gets processed to be more science focused. And that process data then gets looked at by the researchers to improve the basics scientific investigation, what they want to understand. And the end result of this is usually a paper written acknowledging the facility. Some point during this process, the data is taken home for later study, potentially. So that's the simple view. More complicated. So next slide. What actually happens is rather more complicated than that. So what's actually being done that may involve a controlled environment, ramping the temperature or pressure or magnetic field or other constrained environments. There may be multiple scans over different physical locations in the sample or different beam energies. Even the concept, what is raw data, depends a little bit on which facility and which beamline and what exactly they're doing. Understanding what is the sample, how it relates to other samples, has it changed over time, the environment, what aspect of the thing you're investigating is actually the sample, or the reacting environment might be considered the sample. The responsibilities shift depending on who's doing what and how much help they need, for example, or how experienced, what kind of research they're doing. Often, well, not often, in some cases, the data can be too large to leave the facility, so that the data has to be curated there. Most facilities have some connection with industry, which require certain standards being adhered to, and also a certain amount of secrecy, because there potentially commercial secrets involved with what they're doing. And all of this variety, if we want to make data fair or support open science, then all of this variety and complexity somehow needs to be captured, because otherwise the data has little use, I would say. If you really want to reproduce the scientific output or use it for new scientific insights, then you need to understand what's happened, and that's such a wide variety of things. So that's the challenge in all of this. So next slide, please. Taking the poster as a reference point, we kind of started going through trying to understand things. So where things come in. So these are kind of terms from the field, from the domain. So there's an instrument or an end station. This is the physical location where the experimentation takes place, along with equipment inside it. A proposal, this is a standardized mechanism for requesting access to the facility, describing the scientific research you want to do, and to justify the beam time. The beam time is the allocation of some point of the facility's operational activity where you have the ability to run your investigation. Data as a generic term is sort of any generally sort of files or collection of files on a file system. There's a sort of ambiguity within the community whether or not this includes metadata or whether this is simply the data from the detector. I think it depends who you talk to. Metadata is generally ancillary information not coming from the instrument or end station. However, this again is very, very loosely defined. In some cases, temperature measurements, for example, are critical in understanding the science, but they're not coming from the detector. So it's what one person considers metadata, as another person might consider core data. There's, broadly speaking, a separation of citational metadata and scientific metadata based on whether it's referring to people and institutes or whether it's information necessary for doing the scientific work. Data set, again, this is, Roman's comment is nice to hear that people have a definition for a data set. This is actually, again, another rather tricky concept to pin down because the different experiments have very different methodologies. So there's often hierarchies that people are working on, from individual measurements to collections of measurements to collections of measurements. And so data sets may make sense at different aggregations depending on the research taking place.
Just
yep.
1 minute left.
All right, no, I'm nearly done, sir. Storage service stores data. Embargo, the period of time where research has exclusive access to support publication. Repository, slide storage, but with understanding metadata and data sets. And if we go on to the next slide, yeah. So these are the kind of points. So researcher and user, this is fairly straightforward. Data steward, this is a difficult role because it's only now becoming recognized as facilities. There's no consensus yet on what exactly it's involved or how to achieve them, particularly because the metadata you would need to become required to capture as a data steward, a lot of it is unstructured or non-standardized and comes from the researchers themselves. So this is a very tricky thing. Data owner is clearer, although it varies from facility to facility and might change over time. Data analyst is usually the researcher, but the facility staff may have a role to have some kind of responsibility there, depending on the experience and the type of analysis. Data manager, again, usually the facility staff, but again, this is a flexible term. Data custodian, this is to do with being able to keep the data for a reasonable length of time. This is normally the facility. And the data producer would say that would come down to the researcher. But again, it's somewhat flexible as the faculty staff may have some responsibility here, or in certain cases, may be fully responsible. So that's just a quick rundown. So that's me done. Hopefully that's not overrun my 7 minutes.
No, thank you. Thank you, Paul. So now we have the talk of Alison Specht from Australia. Alison, can you introduce yourself? Are you online?
Hi, yes, I am. Can you hear me?
We hear you. We see you. We see your slides.
And see my slides. Thank you. Welcome to, well, it's great to be with you all at RDA P23. We're looking forward in Australia to seeing you in next year at RDA P25, I do believe it is. So maybe this is a nice start with a picture of a pine dune swamp behind me, but you may not see that. I'm going to talk mainly today about some work that Romain and several other people involved in the Parsec project were doing, and we're waiting for publication to be actually produced. So it's in press at the moment. So please do not move on to that next slide. Could you go back? No, thank you. Right. So listening to Paul, our focus is on the research team and how to help a research team look after their data and publish it in the entire research workflow or research data workflow. Describe it, all those, metadata. So Anne-Sophie Bage's, the poster, had wonderful leads, but I'm not going to refer directly to those the way Paul has. Basically, the research teams dealing with complex modern problems who might use Paul's facility, for example, are very complex themselves. They are often multi-country, they have many disciplines, all those tasks that Paul mentioned in the previous slide about the different disciplines involved in accomplishing a project are quite considerable and have often very little in common with one another. So there's a big disciplinary difference, organizations, and of course, career stage, the young researchers who talk one language and the older researchers who do not. So we were interested in people hitting roadblocks and how did terminology and the sharing of terminologies help with that. So next slide, please. Thanks, Romain. Okay, so we defined several types of terminology that could be involved in people's inability to progress their research because of communication channels due to talking a different language. And I've got a list there that I shan't go into, but you can see how some of those relate to the examples from real groups that I have in those little ball graphs to the left. They're actually real groups, not the same group always, but real groups from the point of view of little medium-sized research groups. Next slide, please. And some of the challenges that people came up against here, for example, and again, and this is actually linking a little bit to the data research workflow a little more than my previous slide. Data acquisition. In our paper that you can have a look at, we used a couple of workflows. One was a deep learning workflow of a group. And these stages of data acquisition and data processing are just two examples from that workflow, a formal workflow. In data acquisition, it was remarkable when you're doing a multidisciplinary and multinational project in particular, the words, the phrases, the definitions that people brought to the table often cross purposes with one another. And sometimes this could actually stop work. 3 months of work, longer than that in a multi-year project, had to be thrown away because there was a lack of understanding from Group B that was accomplishing some algorithm versus Group A that had a definition of what they wanted the algorithm to achieve, where they were completely different. And simple things like, in our case, we also looked at sociological data, census data, and the census, the space on the ground that was used to describe the population was named differently and slightly differently defined in terms of area and number and population size, etc. So there was a lot involved in not just knowing what you're talking about, but also properly defining what you're talking about so the adjustments could be made to make comparisons. Data processing, a classic situation of remote sensing, one of the easiest things to harmonize across the globe are large instrumentations like satellites, large ships in the ocean, but actually there's different terminologies involved where quite often person A who's worked for 30 years uses some particular term for the same thing, whereas person B doesn't. And they don't necessarily realize that there's a difference, particularly if that's layered with a different language basis. Of course, the language basis was interesting in open science, where a lot of the terms are in different parts of the world, for example, and this is the particular language one, the concepts kind of exist but aren't absorbed and adopted by the community. And so they're poorly understood, poorly defined, and there's a lot of fuzziness involved, which can really make a difference to what you're talking about. And here's an example of a computational notebook, which we had a few examples in French that could describe it, as opposed to a little cahier on your desk, a nice handwritten object. And of course, in Japanese, it was a real challenge because of the different sort of scripts involved, some extremely historical, that didn't have anything like that. So an environment was the word that helped, or at least we understood helped. Next slide, please. Thank you, Romain. Okay, so this is a bit of a mishmash of recommendations from a couple of papers that we as the team have done. One of which is published, which is the value of a data and digital object management plan in the Data Science Journal of CoData, which is use an interactive data and digital object management plan as a foundation for the work. That seems very, my recommendation number 2 there. It actually probably came first because the paper was earlier, but it's a fundamental, and it really provides a very strong foundation for research teams who think it's a burden by and large, but actually it helps particularly with this terminological and workflow process. But it's got to be alive and got to be managed by someone in that team. A couple of those people in that little ball that we saw before has to be able to communicate with the others to help them have that dictionary conversation at the start. So having the dictionary conversation, it's like we wrote a paper back in 2015 with a number of research groups again, and they all said at the end of their projects, gee, I wish we'd had a data management plan. It's a bit like the dictionary conversation. We almost said that in our group. We should have had that dictionary conversation at the start. And if you can bind those DDOMP, which is the Belmont Forum Parsec interpretation of a DMP, and have a dictionary conversation as well, could be facilitated by a repository and or an instrumentality such as Paul's. Never assume was another aspect of data conversations, workflow descriptions, what your data you're using, what you're publishing. Never assume that everyone in your team will understand. And of course, the other thing is people in your team who you think are remote from the core business of creating an algorithm or analyzing some data or publishing the data are not involved. It's interesting how everyone can really, in a team, can really help. And again, the supporters of the group, and I've got about to stop now, and just a little caveat at the end is to take care of online translation tools because, well, they're increasing every day in their abilities and their competencies, but also very difficult to actually assume that the conversation or the translation has been made effectively. So it still requires scrutiny, or else you can end up with an international incident because someone hasn't translated correctly using the online translation tool, and you've insulted someone either in another discipline or in another country. So I've put a couple of references down there, including a cute little reference, which I'm very proud to have steered, but that was about it, to how to write a good definition, because using good existing vocabularies is often a great challenge for researchers, and they want to define their own. Often in defining their own, they'll realize how valuable the existing vocabularies are. Anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Romain.
Thank you very much, Alison. Very interesting presentation. So please go to see the paper And I will give the floor to Liz Lentatu.
Almost. No worries. So my name is Lisa Lehtsalu. I'm with RDA Europe, and I'm also co-chair of the Professionalizing Data Stewardship Interest Group. And today I'm presenting some of the work of the interest group as it relates to the topic of the session. So I'll jump right in. In the Professionalizing Data Stewardship Interest Group, we're looking at data stewardship on the one hand from organizational perspective, and on the other hand from person level, professional data steward perspective, so individual perspective. And it gives both of those work tracks show that there's confusion, there's fuzziness of terminologies that I would like to highlight. So in terms of this slide, the service perspective, it's just data stewardship services in one organization are not data stewardship services in another organization. So the interest group data survey a couple of years ago, it was 2021, where we looked at, also asked the respondents to highlight which type of services they are providing. And it's quite small here for those in the room, I think. But you can see that, there were repository services, advisory services, training services, and research infrastructure, which were the 4 that got most hits, but, in different combinations. So one organization's data stewardship services are not other organizations' data stewardship services. And this is because service is related to context. And that context, it has many components. It's where this service is placed in terms of the country, where it is based in terms of the continent, so geographic. It has funding aspects to it. So how is the service funded, for example? It has legal aspects to it. So, related to the geographic national context, there could be legal aspects to it, and this is why it's very hard to compare services, to map services to one another, and to know that when you're talking about my data stewardship service, it's the same as another person's data stewardship service. There we go. And when we move from the service level to the individual level, the individual offering service, we see we did another survey where we started by asking, people fulfilling the role of data stewards, what are you called? What is your job title? And this is the cloud. There's everything there. So there are a lot of people doing the job of data stewards who are not called data stewards. And we also looked at the variation in terms of where the respondents were based. And here we start to see that, a data steward, person in this data steward role in North America is, for example, more likely called data librarian. Person in a data steward role in Europe can be called a data steward. Around 33% of the European respondents were called data stewards, but that leaves 67% of the European respondents that were called something else. So again, that raises the issue of mapping, of identifying where the service is and who the provider is. So we go to the next slide. So neither the service that supports data management nor the people who support data management are clearly defined at the moment. There is, and that leads to difficulties in mapping existing services, both within an organization. For example, if you try to start setting up a new service, It's, you want to map your current situation, right? You want to understand what's already there. And it's quite hard to find what's already there, because what's already there is often called something that you don't even know what it's called, but there are people providing service, even though they're called something else. And it's hard to develop new services also because of that. It's difficult to compare services. And it's a huge challenge to professionalizing the roles of data management support services, or roles within data management support services. Some of the solutions that I personally see is one, to extend RDM terminologies so that they actually include, for example, the term data steward. So that there's I think the co-data RDM terminology is quite well known, but that one, for example, does not have term data steward in it. It has data stewardship, but it doesn't have data steward. It has, I think, data manager. It has, it has data librarian, but it doesn't have data steward. To professionalize the roles providing data management support, I think would also go a long way towards clarifying up some of the confusion, so that the people providing the support, they have a clearly defined remit and a clearly defined career path, perhaps, might help in that direction. And also, we need attention to global interoperability here, so that we would be able to start talking to each other about data stewardship support roles in ways that an Australian talking to a European, talking to a North American, talking to a South American would understand each other. So when we professionalize, that's something to perhaps try to keep in mind. And perhaps not the goal of the session, but I think some polyseming and fuzziness is unavoidable. Because, as I said at the very beginning, context matters, and the context is what will keep introducing fuzziness here. So not a very upbeat message to end on.
Thank you, Liz. Perfectly in time. So thank you very much. I think for the next presenter, if he's not online, we have an issue because he sent me a video, but I think that the video, it will be complicated. We'll try, but Pedro, can you take the floor before? And I will jump to your slides directly, and after. Oh, yes, they are here. So Pedro, I'll let you introduce yourself, where you are.
Perfect. Thank you, Roman, for this invitation. I am very happy to be here. And okay. Thank you. Okay. Thank you, Roman. Thank you very much. So my name is Pedro Luis Pizzigato Correa. I am from University of São Paulo. My background is the computer engineering area. And I will talk about a little bit about how you can, the terminology influence the application of AI and how we can manage this problem. I think I will continue the discussion about that Alison started with, talked with us about the project. It's a Parsec. Parsec is a multinational project that was developed with three national agents that funded this project: US, Brazil, and Japan, with 5 countries involved: Brazil, US, Japan, France, Australia. So we'll have many questions related with geographic discussions about the terminology. You have problems with scale, different scale. We have problems, discussion about terminology related with multilingual discussion, French, Portuguese, English, Japanese. So this is a very challenge for work with AI and how you can harmonize this. So I will discuss during my presentation about this. So during the Parsec project, we developed a methodology to discuss this question. So we created a score from 1 to 5, to the terminological challenges, the impact on deep learning workflow from mirror to major. So the idea is to understand, for example, you have a minor problem, number 1, and major problem, number 5. Now, when you have a major problem, you must review, you must stop the step and come back and try to define new approach. And we defined 4 steps in the workflow of AI machine learning experiment. The first step is related with the definition of the experiment. We are collecting data. This is step 1. Step 2 is related with harmonizing, prepare the data sets. But basically, we are working with two different data sources. One is related with remote sensing data, and another one is related with socioeconomic data that we usually we got this data from survey in different countries, national survey, and we harmonized this data, and we organized this data, integrated this data, and we split this data for. We are created the model here and evaluated the performance of the model. So this is the 4 steps that we consider. In each step, we analyze the problem of terminology, vocabulary, terminology discussion for each step. Please, could you, next slide, please? Next slide, please. Yes. So as Alison presented before, we have 7 source of problems to discuss: terminology, polysemic, synonym, fuzziness, idiomatic terms, disciplinarity, variance, regional variance. We work with 5 countries, vagueness, consider the scales. For example, we are talking about Japan, Brazil's different countries, different scale of problems, and the regions, and the lexical gap. And when you have a different languages, Japanese, Portuguese, and issues related with adaptation of terms, because you have some different terms that we use for different community, different science community. We have people from here that work with computer engineering area, machine learning engineering working with us, and we have people from socioeconomic area. We have people from information science. So in this project, we have around 30 researchers with different domains. So we have to manage this question. So we could conduct a survey internally in our project for the people that work with us in the team that develop the machine learning model, and the people that obtain data. So everyone should be in the same page and all during this experiment. So in the stage 1, you have some definition of the work and collect data, definition of scientific questions, hypothesis, methodology across the team. We have some obstacles encountered here. One minor and 5, stop, and we continue. So we found three align of principal keywords from ecological across domains. This is a 5. So we decide to review this. But you have 2 more discussion about aligning of the deep learning models. 15, for example, you have confusion about this, and the scale, discussion about the scale. Next slide, I will finish. Okay. No, I have one more. One more, yes. And I will be very fast in slide because I finished my time here. So you have 2 and 3 and 4. And 2, for example, you have discussion about difference in data organization between different organizations and institutions. For example, you have prefecture, state, census tract, census, sector, block. This is different concepts or different we have different names for this same concept. So this is one thing that we have to do here. And number 3, confusion with some terminology about the satellite data highlight and daytime imagery, multispectral, diurnal imagery. This is some confusion about the linguist in this stage. And the last stage, some problems with about the test, about the in-country, out-country, fuzziness in terminology, adoption challenges. So this is my presentation. Thank you very much for this.
Thank you, Pedro. That was interesting. And in practice, you have seen in a project, in vocabularies, what could be the issues that we have to mitigate, even at a broader scale. We will try to play the video. So thank you. It's again a challenge. Sorry for the organization team. From Yvon Lebras, that is working in biodiversity. I'll introduce himself. I don't know if it's in the video also. I hope that online people will see it. Normally, yes. Yeah, the video is linked. Yes, it is. So I encourage you to connect. I know that I see that all the people that are online are connected to the notes, the collaborative notes. You are able to do it also with the QR code at the beginning of the presentation.
Sorry,
So please do not
Alexander.
hesitate.
Did you hear me, Alexander? We are not seeing your screen this moment virtually. So if you can share again, please.
They are giving, yes, can you play?
Now, yes.
Yes. Okay, thank you.
And now we can hear it. So you can share again with the sound, please.
Please. So that let you the time to try to connect to the collaborative notes. During their try to play the video, I would like you to, if you want to be contacted for the paper, to put your affiliation names and all the information required. We'll have a meeting in the next month, short meeting introducing the goals that we will define together after this session and other workshop before. You have the QR code in the notes. Do you
Hi everyone,
try to...
I'm Yvan Lebrun
okay.
and I'm happy
Pilot speaker.
to speak about virtual research environment in this special session dedicated to terminologies for data management and quality of data management, answering FAIR principle. I hope you see my slides. I'm really sorry to not have possibility to join the meeting. I think I have issue with Wova, sorry for that. So the idea is quite rapidly to speak about terminologies for virtual research environment, where I see challenges around the perimeter of what we call a virtual research environment. Is it something dedicated to the whole research project lifecycle, or more focusing on data-oriented steps? And here, just for key aspects around virtual research environment, you can see that this is something around virtualization, collaboration, interoperability, and help researcher to support a researcher workflow around manipulating data, software, computing power, instrument detectors, and so on. So aside of this VRE perimeter, another issue is related to interoperability. The internal interoperability is something will allow users and maybe provider of VRE to deploy VRE for dedicated communities. So this is something that is more internal, but how we can connect different parts of the VRE we have. But there is also challenges around external interoperability, how you can face the fact that you can have several providers of virtual research environment, and you can share maybe components of this virtual research environment. If I just look at this first ideas on how we can go forward. So first of all is to really choose the scale of the virtual research environment you want to deploy and or use, and this is one crucial element. Do you want to be focusing on data-oriented steps or the entire research life cycle? And another aspect then is to compose with all the components you can use from data to infrastructure using source codes, notably, to propose such a virtual research environment. Other ideas are oriented towards question and point of attention, oriented towards sustainability, notably, because often VRE, virtual research environment, are using existing catalogs or data providers or things like that. And we can see, for example, like for the genome space example, that there can be some questions around the sustainability of such a solution, but also around transparency, fairness, openness, due to the use of such of particular components who can have some limitation, and also regarding in which state you want to provide your virtual research environment related to infrastructure, platform, software, and the kind of solution you want to plug on this services. So I think really one first things to go to reusing terminologies to build virtual research environment. The first framework I want to recommend is really oriented towards the research object framework as presented here, and focusing on using metadata, because for me all is metadata almost, and focusing on metadata, and notably metadata from domain can help to have metadata providing detailed information on each research object type, and so after that allow providing virtual research environment maybe on demand to communities who want to access particular domains oriented research objects. Thanks for your attention. Don't hesitate to ask questions to Romain or to ask questions by email or something else. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So happy to now start the discussion very late. Sorry about that, but we will start something that can continue through next meetings. Can you put the slides, please? So the goal today is to try to see the interest of the audience for the questions that we had. It's the first one. Quick player. Yeah, okay, thank you very much. So we have different discussions that are a kind of core of the topic for us, all the presenters, but also people that are working in the OSCAR project, in the PARSEC project, in the EOS context, and in the RDA, Sensitive Data Interest Group, but also Professionalizing Data Interest Group. Indeed, this is broadly open. Everybody can participate, and we want to explore the need for harmonized terminology for data management. To try to see what are the different examples of polysemie that we can have in these different disciplinaries. What are the commons? What kind of strategy can we adopt in a disciplinary, in a community, or at a broader scale for terminology governance, and the role of standardized terminologies in improving data management and cataloging services. So to do that, we need also to know what you think. So first, I will open the floor for discussion and open questions.
Hi there, James Wilson, University College London. So one thing I didn't hear much here was about the breadth of definitions. So one of the challenges that we've had when it comes to defining who a research data steward is exactly what's encompassed in that term. And we've taken a very broad definition. So we've recently been looking to set up a community of practice within the university, finding all the people who do data stewardy things, but never realized they were data stewards. And obviously you can have quite a broad definition of research data steward, which does encompass librarians through to kind of data engineers, or you can have a much narrower definition. And I'm wondering sort of what other people have, how broad they are using the definition of this kind of terminology, and whether that factors into the kind of issues that's been discussed here.
So does somebody want to propose a response to this question? Yes, please.
I mean, you're absolutely correct. That is a big issue, that there is everybody and nobody's a data steward. So it really depends how a particular organization has defined it, and there is no shared definition, a standardized definition. And I tried to get at it on one of the slides, and also what you just said, that in research performing organizations, it's not like data is not managed already now without data stewards, right? So, and it's not like researchers don't have support. So there are already people providing that support, and they're already hired. They've been hired for years in some cases. And how do you identify them and bring them into data stewardship, because they are not called data stewards or don't even identify themselves as data stewards. So I think that does figure into this very, very strongly.
So I don't have a response, but perhaps I have some elements also that I can share with you. There are several EOSC projects. One is about skills for EOSC, skills for open science in another term. And they have built an ontology at the European and EOSC level, so it could be shared broadly and perhaps changed, modified, but it's a starting point that we have also proposed in the OSCAR project to build a broader vocabulary on terminology on data management. The fact is that this terminology is axed on skills and training. But indeed, we have also other actions like support that can be taken into account, or also planning, project management, things like that can be part of the data stewardship. But it has to be discussed, and it has to be exposed in a paper, and it's another invitation for that. So perhaps, I don't know if it's working now. No, I would like to come back to the beginning. Again, but I don't know why it is not working, but oh yeah, that's perfect. This one. So here you have lots of the elements that you can have, and you can consider them at several stages. At the stage of a researcher, a team of peoples, including researchers, technicians, people that are not always in the team. And after, on the level of a project, on the level of an institute, on the international level with different fora, I include them in them RDA, national RDA, like RDA US, RDA France, RDA Denmark, and others, and the RDA globally. So to define that, we want just to do that with peoples of each community as much as possible. Even we are 10,000 in RDA. I think that we could try to start something, open the tool to everybody, and try to have the most of the participation possible. And there are other tools and works that are already existing. That's the reason why we have this open Google Doc where everybody can put initiative and catalog of initiatives that are already existing, I know. Other reaction on the data steward perimeter?
Hello, so my name is Hector Perez. I work at BESI in Berlin, the synchrotron, and I'm working close with the data stewards. So I don't have a definition exactly of what a data steward, but I can explain you what has been my path and what is the data stewards doing now. So when I start working at BESI, I had to transform all this data that is being saved in different formats to a format that is fair. So I had two problems. First, understand the data that has already been saved, and then to create converters to take this data and put it into the new format. And doing this work, you have to have a close connection with the scientist to understand what this data means, because really have terms that you don't understand. So, and this part of talking with the scientist and understanding their own data is the part that is taking a lot of energy. And so now we have other persons that are working actually as a data steward, and this is exactly the job that they are doing. They are in charge of talking with the scientist, understand their data, and try to describe this data using an ontology so that everything is fair. And my jobs, I'm working with them now, so I'm working more in the conversion part, in the software. So you have this kind of two worlds at least at BESI. I don't know if that helps a little bit. It's not a clear definition, but this is how it's been doing, at least in one synchrotron.
Thank you. So
I'm Mikiko Tanifuji from National Institute of Informatics in Japan. I'd like to share some of our experiences in this term. Regarding the data steward, there's two directions. One is the researchers-driven data steward that they already do, like X-ray facilities. That's exactly good example that they're already doing, and sharing the database by sharing the same terminology. And the other way is to how to educate the data, the people who would assist this data management for researchers, could come from libraries, could come from other domains. And then for that part, we try to provide textbook learning materials in the part of research data infrastructure. So whoever want to use this infrastructure, there is a guide, not guideline, the textbook or sort of materials, so that there is some terminology appeared at the index at the end of the education course that we hope that they will learn it and eventually will share with the researchers driven data steward and then modify to upgrade for the future.
Romain,
So
would it
that's,
be possible?
yeah, for
Can you hear
online,
me?
it's indeed.
Thank you.
So I don't
Thank-
see your hand raised, but you can introduce
Oh,
yourself.
I tried
before,
to,
please.
yeah, it doesn't look very good. Okay, sorry, thank you.
It's Alison, okay.
Thank you. This was going back to data one. We talked with Carol Tenapier and Bill Missioner. We did talk a lot about the emergence of this concept of a data steward, data custodian, data manager. And going back to the original question for this component, I wouldn't be too worried about defining people. It does depend very much on the context, but also on the task at hand. And I'm very pleased to mention that in 2025, we're trying to have a session on long-term data. So I think about the data broker, which was described to me, where you actually work with the researcher and you work out what the dickens they have been doing and try to get the data that they have collected fair. That's a tremendous task. But when we talk for researchers about the need for long-term data over 100 years, say, not always machine created, but how do you cope with transition and skilling up when you're dealing with very often a very recalcitrant group, namely the researchers. So we're keen to have that discussion. But I would draw you to the idea of a checklist, thinking of the Japanese girl and her checklist or guidelines that can point to something larger but is digestible. So this is something one could aim for in this instance. But yeah, so it's across time as well as an individual project, so that I'm particularly thinking about some of the real challenges for data stewardship, whoever does it and whatever their name is. And if they're supported with some guidelines with the book, perhaps, but a shorter guide to the book would be probably a very good idea. Thank you.
Thank you, Alison. Anyone want to react? Yes, I see two persons on the bottom. So yeah, I will run. I ran not so fast. I don't know who is the first one, so I will give to the lady. But
thank you, Jenny Larkin, National Institutes of Health. I came here excited to hear about the discussion about terminologies for data management. I'm equally excited to hear the conversation about data steward and what does it mean. One of the things I've been thinking is, is the data steward a person or is it a skill set and a capability? I've been hearing the discussion more around the person. Just throwing the idea out there, if there's a common definition of the set of capabilities that are needed, and I'm thinking of the comments you had, then there could, I was thinking there are programs where you can get certified. You can be a certified in agile software development. You can be certified in project management. What if you could be certified in data stewardship? So that could recognize all the people who already had the skills and people who are developing it.
okay, perhaps I have some ideas, but I will let my...
Hello, Christopher Lindell from Umeå University, Sweden. Something that I normally don't see when it comes to flowcharts and when brainstorming is the research ethics, because the data steward, depending on how close they are to the research process, they will have also the ability to, affect the data if it's processed, depending. So I was just thinking how the research ethics comes into to this flowcharts, etc.
Thank you. Any other reaction? Yes.
Yeah, just to answer a little bit what was comment here, I think what I have seen during this time is something that is needed into the, for the data steward is to have the personality for it. So it has to be able to communicate. So for instance, I was doing at the very beginning this, so you really have to get the scientist confident with you. So you really have a good communication skills. You have to understand what the scientist is doing so that you can follow the thing. So I don't think it's a profile, a technical profile, but it's mostly I don't know, you're not going to hire a programmer for selling cars. So that's what I try to mean. So it's more the character in order to communicate properly and have these communications. And for the programming and all this stuff, I think it can be delegated to a software engineer. So this steward has to have the ability to talk with this kind of engineers. That's my point of view. Yeah.
Anybody else?
So we were just having a little bit of a side conversation because a lot of this, there are certifications for data stewardship and all of this stuff. The issue is that they are mostly in library schools and they are not well known because library schools, anything with library work is considered women's work and then devalued by our society. So I think that is something that we also need to consider in this conversation.
Our data steward is a woman. She's doing a very good job.
Okay, I guess that it's time to wrap up, even if there are lots of other reactions, I guess. So I would like first to apologize for all the beginning that was very hard, but also thanks to the team, technical teams, just because they have done as they can't due to the trouble on the inundation that we have here. I would like also to say that in line of this terminology issues on detection, on governance discussion, on data stewardship definition, we have another session highly related. It is led by Jan about crosswalk. They are starting to work, and I let Jan presenting that for the conclusion.
So thank you, Roman. So yes, so I'm Yann Lefranc, I'm the CEO of eScience Data Factory, also the head of EUDAT, a pan-European research data infrastructure. And together with my colleague Younes, who is in the back of the room, we're both co-chairs of a newly formed fair mapping working group. Although we're still waiting for the endorsement of the technical advisory board. We have a bird of a feather on Thursday. And I think it's one of the, it's going to be made very important when you start building terminology about data management, because there are many existing terminologies. One that I would like to mention related to data stewardship is some work I've done with Alison Lister and my colleague Pete Malquilton, which is Term for Fair Skills, which was an ontology to try to identify the skills for data stewards to work with FAIR. It's on GitHub, so if you want to look at it. And basically, a big part of the work is going to be reusing other ontologies and linking with other ontologies, so mapping is going to be key for you. So please join the session if you're interested, and of course the working group is open to any goodwill.
And another teaser from the Professionalizing Data Stewardship interest group.
Yes, if you want to take this conversation about certification skills, training, career paths, and why perhaps job titles do matter, further, then we have the Professionalising Data Stewardship Interest Group is in the process of spinning a working group on data steward career tracks, and we're having a BOF session tomorrow afternoon, I want to say. It's called Creating Personas. So look it up in the program, and please come and let's continue this discussion there.
So thank you, Liz, Jan, and thank you everybody for your attendance. And please give your name and affiliations and contact in the notes if you want to participate to the future paper, ongoing paper in the framework of RDA, EOSC, OSCARs, and other networks that have the willingness to be linked. Thank you and good RDA plenary.